Let me get this reading out of the way before I have to hit the road. Okay, gentle people, happy evening to everybody. Happy Saturday evening to everybody, or night or morning, whichever it is, wherever you're at. We have got to get this reading out of the way for today. And so we're going to knock it out of the way in about the next hour or so. We should knock it out the way so that I can get going. So roll on in, guys. We are not going to be spending too much time lollygagging. We are just going to be reading. Let's get the reading on the way. All right, there we go. All right, so we're just going to get the reading out of the way. Last time when we read, Julie was sitting on her veranda, on her porch, whatever they call it, with Mike. And I just have a funny feeling that Richard wasn't too far away. He was probably watching to see if Julie was going to be, was if Julie, what was going to happen between Julie and Mike. So, we don't know. But we're going to move right along into the reading of our book here, guys. Welcome, guys. Come on in. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all so much for sharing in the love of reading with me. I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you who have come over and listened to me read. All right, we are going to move right along. The pizza. The pizza arrived a few minutes later. Okay. The pizza arrived a few minutes later. The teenager, wearing glasses with thick black frame, examined the ticket for an inordinately long time before stammering out the total. Mac was reaching for his wallet when Julie nudged him out of the way, holding her pocketbook. Not a chance. That one's on me. Don't eat more. You can eat the whole thing if you want, but I'm still paying. Before he could object again, Julie handed the delivery boy the money, telling him to keep the change, then carry the box back to the kitchen. Paper plates okay? I eat off paper plates all the time. Well, I know, she said, winking. I can't tell you how sorry I am for you. For the next hour, they ate together, talking quietly in the familiar way they always did. They talked about Jim and things they remembered, and eventually the subject changed to happenings around town and the people they knew. From time to time, Singer would whine, looking as if he felt ignored, and Mike would toss a piece of crust his way without a break in the conversation. As the evening slowly wound down, Julie found herself holding Mike's gaze a little longer than usual. It surprised her. It wasn't as if he had done or said anything out of the ordinary since he had come over. It wasn't even that they were sitting alone on the porch and sharing dinner almost as if the evening had been planned in advance. No, there was no reason for her to feel differently tonight, but she didn't seem able to control it. Nor, she realized, did she really want the feeling to stop, though that didn't make sense either. In his sneakers and jeans, his legs propped upon the railing, his hair mussed, he was cute in an everyday guy kind of way. But then, she had always known that, even before she had started dating Jim. Spending time with Mike, she reflected, wasn't like the dates she had recently been on, including the past weekend with Richard. There was no pretension here, no hidden meanings in the phrases they spoke, no elaborate plans designed to impress the other. Though it had always been easy to spend time with Mike, She suddenly realized that in the whirlwind of the past couple of weeks, she had almost forgotten how much she enjoyed it. It was what she had most enjoyed about being married to Jim. It wasn't only the heady flush of emotions. Hold on, dear guys. Give me a second, dear guys. I gotta return that call in a second. I must return that call. Let's see. Hi guys, sorry about that. Sorry about that. AG, what's up? How are you doing, my love? Good to see you. Welcome into the live. We are going to continue the reading of this book called The Guardian by Nicholas Sparks. Yes, we are going to be reading. We are continuing to read about Julie and Mike. And I don't know about you all, but I just feel like Julie should dump Richard and start dating Mike. That's just how I feel. I don't know about how the rest of you feel about it. But let us continue. Let us continue reading, my darling. Let us continue reading. As evening slowly wound down, Julie found herself holding Mike's gaze a little longer than usual. It surprised her. It wasn't as if he had done or said anything out of the ordinary since he had come over. It wasn't even that they were sitting alone on the porch and sharing dinner almost as if the evening had been planned in advance. No, there was no reason for her to feel differently tonight, but she didn't seem able to control it. Nor, she realized, did she really want the feeling to stop, though that didn't make sense either. In his sneakers and jeans, his legs propped up on the railing, his hair amused, he was cute in an everyday guy kind of way. But then, she had always known that, even before she had started dating Jim. Spending time with Mike, she reflected, wasn't like the dates she had recently been on, including the past weekend with Richard. There was no pretension here, no hidden meanings in the phrases they spoke, no elaborate plans designed to impress the other. Though it had always been easy to spend time with Mike, she suddenly realized that in the whirlwind of the past couple of weeks, she had almost forgotten how much she enjoyed it. It was what she had most enjoyed about being married to Jim. It wasn't only the heady flush of emotions when they had made love that had enthralled her, nor more than that, it was the lazy mornings they had spent reading the newspaper in bed while drinking coffee, or the cold December mornings they had planted bulbs in the garden, or the hours they had spent traipsing through various stores, picking out bedroom furniture, debating the merits of cherry or maple. Those were the moments she had felt most content, when she finally allowed herself to believe in the impossible. Andrea is here. Hey, Andrea, how are you doing? How are you doing? Good to see you. Those were the moments when all seemed right with the world. What do AG, man? AG, how much time you see me face? You never see me face time this morning. Listen, me can't show my face because I have the phone right here, so up on one leg. Yeah, it's a good thing the phone can't walk, man. Sit down on the ledge by itself. Yeah, so me can't show my face. Remembering those things, Julie watched Mike eat. The corners of his mouth upturned slightly. He was fighting long strings of cheese that ran from his mouth back to the slice, making it look very difficult, even more difficult than it was. After taking a bite, he would sometimes sit up suddenly and fumble with the piece, using his fingers to keep the toppings from sliding off or the tomato sauce from dripping. Then, laughing at himself, he would swipe at his face with a napkin, mumbling something along the lines of, almost ruined my shirt with that one. That he didn't take himself too seriously or mind when she didn't either made him made her warm made her warm towards him in a way that reminded her of how she imagined old couples felt as they sat on park benches holding hands. It was still on her mind a few minutes later when she followed him into the kitchen, both of them carrying the remains from dinner. Watched him find the cellophane in the drawer by the. You see, Mike already know her house. He knows where to find everything. When he found the cellophane in the drawer by the oven without having to ask where it was, as he took it upon himself to wrap the pizza and place it in the refrigerator, then automatically reach for the garbage when he noticed it was full, there was a moment, just a moment, when the scene seemed as if it weren't happening now, but as if it were taking place sometime in the future. Just an ordinary evening in a long procession of evenings together. I feel good for them. I just feel like Julie and Mike belong together. I think we just about got it all, Mike said, looking around the kitchen. The sound of his voice brought Julie back, and she felt her cheeks redden slightly. Looks that way, she agreed. Thanks for helping to pick it up around here. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, and Julie suddenly heard the refrain she had lived with the last couple of years start up, as if a recording had been switched on. A relationship with Mike? No way! Not a chance. Mike brought his hands together, interrupting the thought before it went any further. I should probably get going. I have an early day tomorrow. She nodded. I figured I should probably get to bed soon as well. Singer kept me up last night for hours. What was he doing? Whining and growling and barking and pacing the room. Not whatever he would do to hug me. Singer? And oh, Richard came by last night. You know how Richard gets around new people. It was the first time that Richard's name had come up all evening, and Mike suddenly felt his throat parched, as if someone were pressing a thumb to it. Richard was here last night? He asked. No, not in that way. We weren't on a date or anything. He just came by to leave a note on my car to let me know he'd be out of town. Oh, Mike said. It was nothing, Julie added, feeling the urge to clarify. So what time was this? Mike asked. Julie turned to the clock on the wall. She needed to see the position of her hands to remember. I guess around 2 or so. That's when Singer started anyway. But like I said, it went on for a while. Why? Mike pressed his lips together, thinking, and Singer growled the whole time. I guess I was just wondering why he didn't leave the note before he left in the morning, he said. Julie shrugged. I have no idea. Maybe he didn't have time. Mike nodded, wondering whether to say more, then finally deciding not to. Instead, he reached for his toolbox and the faucet, not wanting the evening to end with something that might come across the wrong way. He took a small step backward. Listen, Julie ran a hand through her hair, noticing for the first time a small mole on his cheek that looked almost ornamental, as if it had been dotted there by a makeup artist looking for exactly the right effect. Why, she wondered, did she see that now? I know, you've got to go, she said, cutting off the thought. Mike shifted from one foot to the other, not knowing what else to say. He held, he held up the faucet. Well, thanks for calling me about this. Believe it or not, I'm glad you did. I had a great time tonight. Their eyes met and held for a moment before Mike glanced away. Julie felt herself exhale. She didn't even realize she had been holding her breath, and despite herself, she found her eyes sweeping over Mike as he walked ahead of her to the door. The jeans fit snugly around his rear, and she felt her cheeks redden again, the blood rushing to the surface like silt stirred from the bottom of a country pond. Her eyes jerked upward as Mike turned the door handle. For a moment, she felt as if she had been watching someone at a party from across a crowded room, someone she had never seen before. In any other situation, any other time, she would have laughed at the absurdity of it all. But strangely, she didn't. After saying goodbye, she stood in the doorway watching as Mike went to his truck. In the moment before he closed the door, with the dome light above him glowing like a filtered halo, he waved. Julie returned the wave and then watched as the red taillights of his truck receded into the distance. For almost a minute, she stood on the porch, trying to make sense of her feelings. Mike, she thought again. Mike. Why was she even bothering to think about it? It wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. Crossing her arm, she laughed to herself. Mike, sure, he was nice. Sure, he was easy to talk to. And yes, he was cute. But Mike, the whole thing, she suddenly decided was preposterous. A bunch of nonsense. Julie turned to go. Wasn't it? Let's move on. Chapter 15. In his office the following morning, Henry set the styrofoam cup of coffee on his desk. So that's it? He asked. Mike scratched the back of his head. That's it. You just left? Like that? Yeah. Henry's index fingers came together, forming a triangle that he rested upon his chin. Though normally he would have written Mike about the fact that he hadn't taken the opportunity to ask Julie out. It wasn't the time for that. So let me make sure I've got this straight. You hear a bunch of cryptic stuff from this Jake Blakeson about Richard, which might or might not mean anything, but is definitely a little weird sounding, especially since he wouldn't say any more about it. Then you find out that Richard is coming around her place in the middle of the night and hanging around for God knows how long, and you decide not to tell her that it sounds a little weird to you, or even mention the fact that there might be something to be concerned about. She's the one who told me that Richard came by. It's not like she doesn't know he was there. Not the point, and you know it. Mike shook his head. Nothing happened, Henry. You still should have said something. How? How? Henry leaned back in his chair. The same way I just did. Just tell her what you were thinking. You can say it that way, but I can't, he said, meeting his brother's eyes. She might have thought I was just saying it because of how I feel about her. Look, Mike, Henry said, sounding more like a parent than a brother. You are her friend, and you'll always be her friend, whether or not anything else happens between you two. The same goes for me too, okay? And I don't like the thought of this guy hanging around her place in the middle of the night. That's creepy, no matter what reason the guy comes up with. He could have left the note in the morning. He could have called her on the phone. He could have left a message at work. And a guy gets dressed, hops in his car, and heads across town to leave a note at 2 a.m. And didn't you say that singer kept her up for hours? What if that meant he was skulking around the whole time? Singer was acting up. And what if Blackson was trying to warn you somehow? Didn't you think about any of those things? Of course I did. Didn't like it either. Then you should have said something. You should have. Mike closed his eyes. It had been such a great evening up until that point. You weren't there, Henry, he said. And besides, she didn't seem to think it was odd at all. So don't mind this. Don't make this into something bigger than it really is. All he did was leave a note. I don't know about you guys, but I have a bad feeling about this Richard fellow. But you know these books always have a lot of twists and turns, so I'm gonna leave it right there. How do you know that was all he was doing? Mike started to say something, but the expression on Henry's face made him stop. Look, Henry said, I'm usually more than willing to let you do your own thing, even when you screw up. But there's a time and place for everything. This isn't the time to start keeping secrets from her, especially about stuff like this. Does that make sense? After a moment, Mike's chin dropped to his chest. Yeah, he said, makes sense. Well, it sounds like you two had a good time. Well, it sounds like you two had a good time, Mabel said. We did, Julie replied. You know how he is. It's always a lot of fun. Mabel swiveled in the empty seat as they were talking. No customers were scheduled for another few minutes, and they had the place to themselves. And your faucet's good to go? Julie was busy setting up her station, and she nodded. He put a new one in. Did he make it look easy? Like you wondered why you had to call him in the first place? Yeah. Don't you hate that? Every single time. Mabel laughed. Sure is something else, isn't he? Julie hesitated. From the corner of her eye, she saw Singer sitting by the front door and staring out the window as if wanting to be let out. Though Mabel's question didn't require a response, there was an element of seriousness to the possible answer, one that she hadn't stopped thinking about since the night before. She wasn't sure why the evening lingered in her mind. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't even all that memorable. But the night before, with the moonlight streaming through her window and moths beating against the window pane, Mike had been not only the person she had been imagining, but she trailed off before she trailed off to sleep, but also the first one she had thought about as her eyes fluttered open the next morning. Julie's reply came effortlessly as she moved towards the door to let Singer out. Yes, she said, he is. Mike, Henry called out. You have got company. Mike poked his head out of the supply room. Who is it? Take a wild guess. Before he could answer, Singer trotted up beside him. It was late afternoon by the time Julie marched over to the garage. Hands on her hips, she glared at Singer. If I didn't know better, I think this was all sort of a plan to make sure I'd come over here, she said. As soon as she said it, Mike did his best to project his thanks to Singer telepathically. Maybe he's trying to tell you something. What? I don't know. Maybe that he hasn't been getting enough attention lately. Or he gets plenty of attention. Let him fool you. Boiled rotten. Singer, sitting on his haunches, began scratching with his back leg, as if demonstrating his indifference to what either of them was saying. Mike was unfastening the snaps of his overalls as they were talking. I hope you don't mind, he said, but this thing is driving me crazy. Got some transmission fluid on it, and I've been breathing the fumes all day. So you've got a little buzz going, huh? No, just a headache. I'm not that lucky. Julie watched as he pulled the overalls down and slipped them off, balancing first on one leg, then on the other, before balling them up and tossing them into the corner. In jeans and a red t-shirt, she thought he looked younger than he actually was. So what's on your agenda tonight? She asked. Just the usual. Saving the world, feeding the hungry, fostering world peace. It's amazing how much a person can do in a night if he puts his mind to it. So true. Mike gave a boyish grin, but as Julie ran a hand through her hair, he was suddenly struck by the same nervousness he had felt the night before when he had first walked into her kitchen. What about you? Anything exciting planned? Oh, I have a little cleaning to do at home and a few bills to pay. Unlike you, I have to take care of the little things before I set out to perfect the universe. Mike caught sight of Henry leaning against the door jamb as he studied the stack of papers he was holding, pretending not to notice Mike and Julie, but making sure his presence was known so that Mike wouldn't forget what he had said earlier. Mike pushed his hands into his pockets. He didn't want to do this. He knew he had to, but he didn't want to. He took a deep breath. Hey, do you have a few minutes? He asked. There's something I'd like to talk to you about. Sure, what's up? Would you mind going somewhere else? I think I need a beer first. Though puzzled by his sudden seriousness, Julie couldn't deny what she was, that she was pleased that he had asked. Beer sounds great, she said. A short walk up the street near the edge of downtown, Tizzy's was sandwiched between a pet shop and a dry cleaners. Like the sailing clipper, it was nearly clean. It was neither clean nor particularly comfortable. A television blared in the corner of the bar. The windows were chalky with dirt, and the air was filled with smoke that curled above the tables like the contents of a lava lamp. For those who visited Tizzy's regularly, none of those things were important, and there were half a dozen people who practically lived in that place. According to Tizzy Welburn, the owner, his bar was popular because it had character. By character, Mike assumed he meant cheap booze. On the plus side, Tizzy wasn't a real stickler for rules. Customers needed neither shoes nor shirts to get service, nor did he care what customers brought with them. Over the years, everything from samurai swords to inflatable dates had been dragged through the doors. Despite Julie's rigorous denials, it was in this category that Singer also fell. As Mike and Julie settled onto a pair of stools at the far end of the bar, Singer circled once before lying down. Tizzy took their order before setting two beers in front of them. Though not as chilled as they could be, they weren't warm, and Mike was thankful for that. In this place, a customer couldn't count on much. Julie looked around. Place is such a dive. I always feel like I'll catch something contagious if I stay for more than an hour. But it's got character, Mike said. Character. Sure it does, big spender. So what's so important that you felt the need to drag me out here? Mike wrapped both hands around the bottle. It's something that Henry said I should do. Henry? Yeah. He paused. He thought I should have said something yesterday. To you, I mean. About what? About Richard. Richard. Mike, Mike sat up straighter in his seat. About him dropping off that note the other night. What about it? Henry thought it sounded a little weird. You know, him coming by in the middle of the night to do it. Julie looked at him skeptically. Henry was worried about that? Yeah. Henry? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you weren't? No, Mike said. Julie took a drink of her beer. Why was Henry so worried? It's not as if Richard were peeking in the windows. Singer would have gone through the glass if that happened. And the note did say there was an emergency, so maybe he left right away. Well, there was something else that happened too. The other day, someone from the bridge crew came into the garage and he said something kind of weird. Like what? While running his fingernails through the carved grooves in the bar, Mike told her what Jake Bladson had said and went into a bit more detail about Henry's comments. When he had finished, Julie put her hand on Mike's shoulder, her lips curling slowly into a smile. Oh, that's so sweet of Henry to worry about me like that. It took a moment for Mike to digest her response. Wait, you are not mad? Of course I'm not mad. It makes me feel good to know that I've got friends like him who watch out for me. What? What? Well, Julie laughed, gently nudging Mike's shoulder. Come on, admit it. You were worried too. It wasn't just Henry, was it? Mike swallowed. Well, no. Then why didn't you just say something at the beginning? Why put it all on Henry? I didn't want you to be mad at me. Why do you think I'd be mad at you? Now, why? Because, well, you are dating the guy, and I didn't want you to think, well, I wasn't sure well, Mike trailed off, not wanting to say it. You didn't want me to think that you were just saying it so I'd stop seeing him? Julie asked. Yeah. Julie seemed to study him. Do you really have that little faith in our friendship that I just ignore the last 12 years? Mike didn't answer. You know me better than anyone, and you are my best friend. I don't think there's anything you could say to me that would lead me to believe that you are doing it just to hurt me. If there's one thing to be, if there is one thing I've come to know about you, it's that you're not even capable of something like that. Why do you think? Why do you think I like spending time with you so much? Because you are a good guy, a great guy, a nice guy. Mike turned away, thinking she might as well have called him a eunuch. Nice guys finish last. Isn't that what people say? Julie used their finger to rotate his face back to hers and met his eyes. Some people, not me though. What about Richard? Him. You have been spending a lot of time with him lately. She leaned back on her stool as if trying to bring him into better focus. Why, if I didn't know better, I'd say you sound jealous about that, she teased. Mike took a drink of his beer, ignoring her comment. Don't be jealous. We went out on a few dates and had a few laughs. So what? It's not a big deal. It's not like I'm planning to marry the guy. You are not? Julie snorted. Kidding me, right? She paused, but Mike's expression made her answer her own question. You are not kidding, are you? What? Did you think I was in love with him? I had no idea. Oh, she said. Well, I'm not. I'm not even sure I'd go out with him again. And it's not because of what you just told me either. Last weekend was great. It was fun, but it just wasn't there. And then Monday, he just seemed a little off somehow, and I decided it wasn't worth it. Really? She smiled. Really? Wow. It was all Mike could think to say. Yeah, wow. Tizzy walked past and turned the channel on the television to ESPN before checking to see if they wanted another drink. Both Julie and Mike shook their heads. So what's next then? Mike asked. Gonna see good old Bob again? I hope I don't have to. Mike nodded. In the dinginess of the surroundings, Julie was luminescent, and he felt his throat go dry. He took another drink of his beer. Well, maybe someone else will come along, he offered. Maybe? Julie rested her chin in her hand, holding his gaze. It won't take long. I'm sure there are a dozen guys just waiting for their chance to ask you out. I only need one. She smiled broadly. He's out there, Mike declared. I wouldn't worry about it. I'm not worried. I think, well, let me turn on the light first. West. I'm not worried. I think I've got a pretty good handle now on what I'm looking for in a guy. Now that I've been out a few times, things are a little clearer. I want to find a good guy, a nice guy. Well, you deserve one, that's for sure. Mike, Julie, Mike, Julie couldn't help but think was sometimes as dense as marbles. She tried another tack. So what about you? You ever going to find someone special? Who knows? You will, if you look, that is. Sometimes they are right under your nose. Mike tugged at the front of his shirt. He hadn't realized how hot it was, but he felt as if he might start sweating if he didn't get out of here in a few minutes. I hope you are right, he said. Again, they were silent. So, Julie said, willing him to say something. So, he said, glancing around the room. Julie finally exhaled. I guess this is going to be up to me, she thought. If I wait for this Casanova, I'll be so old that he'll have to escort me in my walker. So what are you doing tonight? She asked. I haven't thought about it. I was thinking we might go out. Go out? Yeah. There's a place on the island that's really nice. It's right on the beach, and I hear the food is really good. Should I find out if Henry and Emma could come too? She brought her fingers to her chin. Hmm. How about if it's just the two of us? Uh, just the two of us can make it if we try. You and me? He could feel his heart thumping beneath his ribs. Sure, why not? Unless you don't want to, of course. No, I want to, he said a little too quickly, then immediately regretted it. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to calm down. Be cool, he thought. He gave her his James Dean look. I mean, I think I'll be able to work that out. Julie stifled a laugh. Gee, she said, I appreciate that. So you asked her out, huh? Henry said. Mike was leaning like a cowboy in an old western, one knee bent, his foot pressed against the wall, head angled forward. He was studying his fingernails as if the whole thing were no big deal. It was time. Mike gave an elaborate shrug. Well, good. And for sure it's a date. Mike raised his eyes as if Henry's question tried his patience. Oh, yeah, it's definitely a date. So, how did you do it? I mean, did it just come up? I just worked into it. So, I just let the conversation go that way. And when the time was right, it happened. Just like that, huh? Just like that. Hmm, Henry said. He knew Mike was lying somehow, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. It did, after all, sound as if they were going out on a date. So what did she say about Richard? Mike brushed his fingernails against his shirt and examined them. Think that's pretty much over now. Did she say that? Oh, yeah, Henry said. He was drawing a temporary blank as to what to say next. Couldn't tease him, couldn't offer advice, couldn't do anything without first figuring out why the whole sequence of events sounded a little fishy. Well, I guess all I can say is that I'm proud of you. It's about time that you two got the ball a rolling. Thanks, Henry. No problem. He motioned over his shoulder. Now listen, I've got a little work left in the office, and I want to get home a decent hour, so let me get back to it. You got it. Feeling just about as good as he had ever felt in his life, Mike lowered his foot to the floor and headed back to the garage a moment later. Henry watched him go, then walked into his office, closing the door behind him. He picked up the telephone, dialed, and a moment later heard Emma's sweet voice on the other end of the line. You are never going to believe what I just heard, he said. What? Henry filled her in. Well, it's about time, she crowed. I know. I said the same thing. But listen, do you think you could get Julie's side of the story? I thought you said Mike told you all about it. He did. Just leaving something out. Emma paused. You're not planning anything, aren't you? To sabotage this? No, no, not at all. I just want to know how it really happened. Why? So you can tease him? Of course not. Henry, come on, sweetie. You know me. I don't do anything like that. I just want to know where Julie's coming from. Mike's taking this pretty seriously, and I don't want him to get hurt. Emma was quiet, and he knew she was wondering whether or not to believe him. Well, I haven't had lunch with her in a while. Henry nodded, thinking, oh, it's my girl. Julie unlocked the front door, carrying a bag of groceries and the mail, and staggered in the direction of the kitchen. Out of practically everything, she had stopped at the store in hopes of picking up something healthy, but she had grabbed a single serving of microwave lasagna instead. Singer hadn't followed her in. He had hopped out of the jeep after it had stopped and taken off through the wooden lots that stretched to the intercoastal waterway. Excuse me. He wouldn't be back for a few minutes. Julie popped the lasagna in the oven, changed into shorts and a t-shirt in her bedroom, then headed back to the kitchen. She she thumbed through the mail, bills, assorted coupon mailers, a couple of mail order catalogs, then set the whole stack off to the side. She wasn't in the mood to deal with those things right now. She was going out with Mike, she thought. Mike. She whispered his name aloud. Whisper She whispered his name aloud, checking to see if it sounded as unbelievable as it felt right now. Yup. As she was thinking, her eyes flashed to the answering machine and she noticed the blinking light. She hit play and Emma's voice came on, asking if she'd like to go to lunch on Friday. If she can't make it, if you can't make it, give me a call. Otherwise, let's meet at the deli, okay? Sounds good to me, Julie thought. A moment later, the machine beeped, and she heard Richard's voice come through. He sounded tired, as if he had been swinging hammers all day. Hey, Julie, just calling to check in. But I guess you are not around, huh? I'll be out most of the evening, but I'll be home tomorrow. He paused, and she could hear him take a deep breath. You can't believe how much I missed you right now. Julie heard the click as he hung up the phone. On the windowsill, she saw a finch hop twice before flying away. Oh boy, she suddenly thought, why do I get the feeling he's not going to take this very well? I don't think he's going to take it well either. I don't think so. He seemed a little bit possessive to me. Mike swung by, we're on to verse 16, guys. Mike swung by Julie's the following evening, a little before 7, dressed in dockers and a white linen shirt. After turning off the truck engine, he slipped his keys into his pocket, grabbed the box of chocolates, and started up the walk, rehearsing what he was going to say. Even though she wanted him to be himself, he couldn't shake the desire. He couldn't shake the desire to impress her, to dazzle her, really, starting with his opening line. After hours of contemplation, he had decided on great idea to go to the beach. It's beautiful tonight, not only because it sounded natural, but because it wouldn't sound as if he were coming on too strong. This was his chance, maybe his only chance, and he didn't want to go down in flames. Judy stepped outside just as Mike was approaching the door and said something friendly, probably a greeting of some sort. But her voice, coupled with the staggering realization that the date was actually happening, ruined his train of thought, and he forgot what he had intended to say. In fact, he pretty much forgot about everything. There were pretty women everywhere, he thought as he looked at her. There were women who made men turn their heads, even if they had a date on their arm. There were women who could get off with a warning when a trooper pulled them over for speeding simply by batting their eyelashes. And then there was Julie. Most people would consider her attractive. There were flaws, of course, a nose that upturned slightly, a few too many freckles, hair that more often than not seemed to do as it pleased. But as Mike watched her start down the steps, her sundress billowing slightly in the spring breeze, he knew he had never seen anyone more beautiful. Mike, Julie said. Okay, he thought. This is my chance. Don't blow it. I know exactly what to say. Just stay calm. Let the words flow naturally. Mike, Julie said again. Her voice brought him back. Everything except the opening line. Are you okay? She asked. You look a little pale. Mike's mouth opened for a moment, then closed when he realized he didn't remember what he had intended to say. Don't panic, he thought. Don't panic. But he's beginning to panic. Whatever you do, don't panic. He decided to just trust himself and took a deep breath. I brought chocolate, he finally said, holding out the box. Julie looked at him. I see that. Thank you. I brought chocolate. That's all I could come up with. Hello, Julie sang. Anyone there? The opening line, the opening line. Mike concentrated and felt the line beginning to take form in bits and pieces. Julie, however, was waiting for him to say something, anything. You are beautiful at the beach tonight. He finally blurted out. Julie studied him for a moment, then smiled. Thank you, but we are not there yet. That's what I was thinking like. You're beautiful at the beach tonight. You have not even left Julie's house yet. Mike shoved his hands in his pockets. Idiot. I'm sorry, he said, not knowing what else to do. You believe this man is 30 something years old? About what? Not knowing what to say. Thinking about. Her expression was a curious blend of confusion and patience. And it was that, above all, that finally enabled Mike to figure out the right thing to say. Nothing, he said. I guess I'm just glad to be here. Julie sensed the sincerity of his words. So am I, she said. Mike recovered slightly with that. He smiled, but looked off into the distance, as if beginning a protracted scholarly study of the neighborhood. He said nothing right away, unsure where to go from here. Well, you ready to go? He finally asked. Poor thing, Delia. Whenever you are. As he turned and started towards the truck, Mike heard Singer bark from inside the house, and he looked over his shoulder. Singer is not coming? I wasn't sure you'd want him along. Mike stopped. Singer, he thought, might ease his nerves by reducing expectations on both their parts. Kind of like a chaperone. He can come if you want. We'll be at the beach, and he'll love it. When she looked towards the house, Singer barked again. His face was in the window. She wanted him to come since he was practically everywhere with her. But then again, it was supposed to be a date. With Richard or any of the other men she had dated. For that matter, hadn't even considered it. You sure you wouldn't mind? Not at all. She smiled. Give me just a second to go open the door, okay? A couple of minutes later, as they were driving over the bridge that led to both banks, Singer barked again. He was in the bed of the pickup, his lips and tongue flapping in the wind, looking as pleased as a dog could look. I think Singer is sensing something. Singer is sensing something. You know how dogs' intuition are? Singer curled up in the warmth of the sand in front of the restaurant as Julie and Mike took their seats at the small table on the second floor patio. Low slung clouds were thinning out in the slowly darkening sky. The ocean breeze, always stronger on the island, made the flaps of the table umbrella move in steady rhythm, and Julie tucked her hair behind her ears to keep her strands from flowing in her face. The beach itself was largely empty. The crowds didn't start until after Memorial Day. and the waves rolled over the smooth swells of sand near the water's edge. The restaurant itself was casual and pleasant, and because of its location right on the beach, most of the other tables were occupied. When the waiter came by, Julie ordered a glass of wine. Mike opted for a bottle of beer. During the short ride over, they had talked a little about what they had done earlier that day. As usual, they touched on Mabel and Andrea, Henry and Emma. While they chatted, Mike tried to gather himself. He couldn't get over the fact that he had mangled a full day's worth of planning when he had botched the opening line. But somehow it had worked out anyway. He wanted to attribute it to his natural charm, but deep down he knew that Julie hadn't noticed simply because he didn't find it out of the ordinary. There was something disheartening about that. But on the plus side, at least she hadn't teased him about it. During their first few minutes at the restaurant, Mike found it difficult to concentrate. After all, he had thought of this moment pretty much every single day for the last couple of years, and he kept returning to the thought that if he played this right, there was a chance he might kiss Julie later. When she lifted the wine glass and took a sip, puckering her lips as she did so, Mike knew it was one of the most sensual things he had ever seen. Through their drinks, he kept up a stream of conversation and even made her laugh a couple of times. But by the time dinner came, his nerves were so jangled that he couldn't remember much of anything that was said. Gotta get a hold of yourself, he thought. Mike was not being himself. Julie wasn't surprised. She knew it would take a while for him to loosen up. Still, she hoped it would happen a little sooner rather than later. He wasn't completely comfortable either, and he wasn't exactly making it easy on her. The way his eyes kept boggling over time, she touched every time she touched her glass, made her want to ask if he had ever seen anyone drink wine before. The first time it happened, she thought he was trying to warn her that she was on the verge of swallowing a bug that had landed in her drink. Tonight was different from the night he had come over to fix her faucet, but she hadn't anticipated how awkward it might feel when she asked him out at Tizzy's yesterday. After all, Mike was not only a potential part of her future, he was a fixture in her past as well. And of course, Jim's. She had thought about Jim more than once as they were eating and found herself comparing the two. What surprised her was that Mike, even while making this harder than it should be, was holding up fairly well. Mike would never be like Jim, but there was something about the way she felt when she was with him that reminded her of the good times in her marriage. And she felt sure, as she had with Jim, that not only did Mike love her now, but there would never come a day when he wouldn't. There was only a brief moment during dinner when the feeling of betrayal forced its way to the forefront of her thoughts, leaving her with the impression that Jim was somehow watching over them. But it passed as quickly as it came, and for the first time in its wake, she was left with a warm sensation, one that reassured her that Jim wouldn't be upset at all. By the time they finished their dinner, the moon had risen, leaving a fan of white over the darkened water. Would you like to take a walk? Mike suggested. That sounds great, Julie said, putting her glass on the table. Mike stood. Julie straightened her dress, then adjusted the strap that had fallen over her shoulder. Moving to the railing, Mike squeezed past her, and through the smell of salt and brine that was coming from the odor of his cologne, reminding her how much had suddenly changed. Mike leaned over, looking for Singer, his face passing through the shadow. But when he turned his head, the moonlight seemed to catch and hold the rough texture of his skin, giving him the appearance of someone she barely knew. His fingers, perched on wrought iron, were stained with grease, and she realized once again how different he was from the man who had once walked her down the aisle. No, she thought, I'm not in love with Mike. Julie felt herself begin to smile. Not yet. Anyway, okay, guys, I did that just in time. Just in time. That is going to be the end of the hour reading for today. Yes, for oh, 1 hour. All right. So, okay, chapter 17 is close by. So we're going to read these 2 pages that take us to chapter 17, and that is going to be it for today. So I'm just preparing you all for the end of today's reading. Okay, let us continue. You got kind of quiet there towards the end of dinner, Mike said. They were walking along the water's edge. They had taken off their shoes, and Mike had rolled up his pants legs to mid-shin. Singer wandered ahead of them, his nose to the ground, in search of crabs. Just thinking, Julie murmured. Mike nodded. About Jim? She glanced at him. How did you know? I've seen that in expression lots of times. You'd make a terrible poker player. He tapped the side of his head. Nothing gets by me, you know. Yeah. So what was I thinking exactly? You were thinking that you were glad you married him. Oh, now that's going out on a limb. Was I right though? No. So what were you thinking about? It's not important. Besides, you don't want to know. Why? Is it that bad? No. Tell me. All right. I was thinking about his fingers. His fingers? Yeah. You have grease on your fingers. I was thinking that in all the time I was married to Jim, I never saw his fingers look like yours. Mike self-consciously moved his hands behind his back. Oh, I didn't mean it in a bad way, she said. I know you are a mechanic. Your hands should be dirty. Dirty? I wash them all the time. They're just stained. Don't be so defensive. You know what I mean. Besides, kind of like it. Do you? I guess I kind of have to. Really? How would you even mention that, Julie? They come with the package. Mike's chest puffed out as they walked in silence for a few more steps. So, do you think you'd like to go? Do you think you'd like to go out tomorrow night? Maybe we could head into Beaufort. That sounds like fun. Now Julie is making all these dates with Mike. She told Richard yet that she don't want to see him anymore. Julie, you're treading in dangerous waters now. You gotta cut that out. You gotta close one chapter before you move into another. He might have to leave Singer this we might have to leave Singer this time, he added. That's okay. He's a big boy. He can handle it. Is there any place in particular you'd like to go? It's your turn to pick. I've done my duty. And you did it well. Mike sneaked a look at her, reaching for her hand. What a great idea to go to the beach. It's beautiful tonight. Julie smiled as his fingers interlocked with hers. Yes, it is, she agreed. They left the beach a few minutes later when Julie started getting chilled. Mike was reluctant to let go of her hand even when they reached his truck, but he didn't have a choice. He considered taking it again once he was in the car, but she had put both hands in her lap and was staring out the side window. Neither of them said much on the way home. When he walked her to the door, he realized that he had no idea what she was thinking. He knew exactly what he was thinking. However, he hoped she would hesitate on the porch right before they said their goodbyes, giving him the chance to make sure his pucker was just right. Didn't want to blow this either. Great time tonight, he said. Me too. What time should I be ready tomorrow? 7 o'clock? Sounds great. Mike nodded, feeling like a teenager. This was it, he thought, the big moment. It all comes down to this. So, he said, playing it cool. Julie smiled, reading his thoughts. She reached for his hand and squeezed it before letting go. Good night, Mike. I'll see you tomorrow. It took a second. It took a second to process the rejection, and he shifted his balance from one foot to the other, then back again. Tomorrow? He said uncertainly. She opened her purse and began searching for the keys. Yeah, our date. Remember? She found the keys and slipped one into the lock, then, then looked up at him again. By then, Singer had joined them, and she opened the door, letting him inside. And thanks again for a very nice evening. She waved before following Singer into the house. When the door closed behind her, Singer simply stared before he realized she wasn't coming back out. A few seconds later, he left the porch, kicking at the gravel as he made his way to the truck. Oh God, poor Mike. Get ready, guys. This is going to be the last paragraph for tonight. Knowing she wouldn't be able to fall asleep, Julie began flipping through the pages of a catalog as she sat on the couch, replaying the evening. She was glad she hadn't kissed Mike on the porch, though she wasn't sure why. Maybe she just needed more time to adjust to her newfound feelings towards him. Or maybe she just wanted to see him squirm. When he squirmed, he was cute in a way that only Mike could be. And Henry was right. He was fun to tease. She picked up the remote and turned on the television. It was still early, not even 10 o'clock yet, and she settled as a CBS drama about a small town sheriff who feels compelled to risk his life to rescue people. 20 minutes later, just as the sheriff was about to save a youngster trapped in a burning car, she heard a knock on the door. Singer rose quickly, bounding through the living room. He poked his head out the curtains, and she assumed that Mike had come back. Then Singer started growling. OMG. I know Singer is growling because it's probably Richard. And Richard saying that he's gone somewhere, I think that is one of the oldest tricks in the book. When a man wants to stalk you and they tell you, oh, they are going out of town, while all the while they are somewhere watching to see what you are going to be doing. It is one of the oldest tricks in the book. But I guess Julie better be careful because I do not trust Richard. Not from here to where I can throw him. I do not trust him. I think he could be dangerous. But when we come back tomorrow, we will continue reading chapter 17. We will see if it was Richard or not, and what does Julie have to say to Richard, considering that she hasn't closed the chapter with him yet, but she has started a new chapter with Mike. So guys, that's going to be the end of the reading for today. Once again, I want to say thanks to you all for coming into the live. Thanks to those of you who came in, those of you who commented in the chat. My dear family, Delia, bless up yourself. Andrea AG and the others who came in. If you did not hit the like button coming in, guys, don't forget to hit the like button on your way out. And that's how it's going to be for now. Until next time, my friend. This is Trev from Trevesan Square. Your journey matters. Have a great night, everybody. I'm going out. I'm going out to dinner, so I will see you all later. I might run a live later. I might not. See.